Van Show. He's a monster on a mission to talk to lots of folks. Van Show. Van Show. Van Show. Van Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fan Show! Yay! Thank you for the enthusiasm, Andrea. We have a very special guest, somebody who I am so excited to have on this show. It is Andrea Stewart. Say hello, Andrea. That's you. Say hello.
I do. Oh, hello.
You'll catch on. You got this.
Yeah.
Now, Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, of course. We love to talk to creatives, and you, my friend, are that. You are a creative. And so, first of all, let's get to know you a little bit. So tell us where you're from.
So I am from California. I'm from Northern California, a little bit south of San Francisco.
So first of all, you're an author.
I am.
And I'd like to hear the story about how you realized that writing stories, telling stories, was something that you were so passionate about, you wanted to make a career at it.
So I actually dictated my first story to my mom when I was 3 years old. I apparently demanded that she write it down. It was not a very good story.
What?
No, it was a rip-off of Sleeping Beauty. But
we call those adaptations.
Oh, adaptations, okay. A retelling.
There you go. It's not a rip-off.
Yeah, so, but when I became more serious about it was in 5th grade. My 5th grade teacher had us do a creative writing exercise. And it was like, oh, have a sculpture and bring it to life and what happens. So I wrote this whole elaborate story about a clay sculpture of a peregrine falcon that came to life.
Ooh.
So my teacher really, really liked it, and she ended up reading it to her other classes, and it made me think that maybe this is something that I could do. So I ended up commandeering my dad's computer in the basement, which at that time had like black screen, green letters that tells you how old I am.
I know, I remember.
But yeah, so I started typing out like really bad Black Stallion fan fiction, basically.
Whoa, there we go.
But I just continued from there. So I ended up writing like my first book when I was in middle school, and I finished that, but I didn't do anything with it. But from there, I just continued to write books, and it wasn't until I had graduated college that I actually started trying to get published.
Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so the oldest query letter that I can find in my email is from 2007. I know that I was querying earlier than that because there were paper queries back then, so I know I did some of that.
Wait, before we go on, can you explain, what's a query?
Okay, so query letter is basically where you write a pitch for your story and you send it out to agents, and then they say whether or not they want to read more.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so the first step in getting published is getting an agent. So I sent out query letters for my first finished book, and that didn't go anywhere. I got like 80-something rejections.
Wow.
So I wrote another book. And then I sent queries out for that. While I was sending queries out for that, I wrote another book, and I sent queries out for that. I did finally get a yes from an agent. That was 6 years from 2007, so it was like 2013 at that point was when I finally got an agent. And then we revised that book, and we sent that on submission to editors. I got no responses, so not even a rejection, just radio silence.
Wow, rude.
So I wrote another book, and we sent that out on submission after I did a bunch of revisions on it, and then we got 2 nice rejections. So
okay.
Okay, somebody's listening.
That's a step up.
So I wrote another book and did a bunch of revisions on that. We sent it out. And that was The Bone Shard Daughter, and I got my first offer within 2 weeks.
Whoa, there you go. See, persistence pays off.
Yeah, so I always tell people if you're getting rejected, it doesn't mean that you're a bad writer. Sometimes it's just like the timing isn't right, or it's not the right book.
Yeah, well, and the more that you write, the better you're getting at it. Like it's all like, working out.
Yeah, so that was the 7th finished manuscript that I had written.
And that was the one.
That was the one that got me in.
How many books have you published so far?
So it's 4 now. So I just had my 4th one come out.
Wow.
So yeah, so I'm like, oh, I'm doing it.
You're doing it. I mean, and it's funny. The last author we talked to said it also took them 6 years to get published. Now he was working on the same book for 6 years.
Yeah.
But different stories to the same path to a career as an author.
Yeah. So for me, it was 12 years overall.
And here you are.
And here I am.
4 published books.
Yes.
World famous Andrea Stewart. Right here on the Van Show. Oh my goodness. Right, Fernie? Oh, I'm sorry. How rude of me. Andrea, I didn't introduce you to Fernie.
Hi.
Fernie is our resident Fern. So now, Andrea, you brought up. This is your 4th book that you brought with us.
Yes.
Brought to us today. Tell us a little bit about it.
So it's an epic fantasy. It's called The Gods Below. It's book 1 of a series called The Hollow Covenant.
Ooh.
And it is set on a hollow world where magic exists as particles in the air, and it becomes more and more dense the closer you get to the center of the world, which is where the gods live.
Oh. Like the center, like as in like you dig down into the earth?
Yeah, you can actually get there through tunnels if you choose the right path. But it centers around 2 sisters who get separated by a cataclysmic event, and they end up on opposite sides of a clandestine war between the gods.
Is that it?
That's
huge. Wow. Like, so you must have spent a lot of time world building.
Yeah, I generally do, just because I like the world to be very different from our world. So I have to think about what are those like logical internal consistencies for the world.
Something else I read about you is that you like to fall down research rabbit holes, as you call them. And I've found myself doing the same thing. I've discovered some really cool, weird things in this world by going, what's that word? And then I look it up, and then all of a sudden I'm like, scrolling on the internet, like, oh my goodness, what? I can't believe this. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the more interesting rabbit holes you've fallen down?
Okay, so for the one that I'm working on right now, which is the 2nd book in this series, there's a whole scene with like a latrine ditch. So I ended up going down this unnecessarily deep rabbit hole, researching how people dealt with waste in medieval London. So,
I imagine it was pretty gross.
Well, it is pretty gross, but it's also fascinating because they'd have like these pits in their houses. They just throw everything in, and then that's where all their waste would go. But then, eventually somebody had to come and take it out. So they had these people that they're called like night soil men.
Oh no!
And they would come and they come and dig it out, and they'd sell it for fertilizer. But it was a very dangerous job.
Yeah.
Because like the smell of the ammonia could cause people to pass out and things. So like. It was pretty intense, but for me it was like a really kind of interesting thing because I had no idea how people dealt with it before the advent of like a sewer system.
Right.
So, but I did not use the amount of info that I actually ended up researching.
Now, is there a what do you call it, night soil man in this story?
There is. There's the equivalent of that because somebody's got to take it out. And somebody's got to have this job, and one of my characters ends up finding themselves in that job briefly.
Well, I'm glad that you're representing the night soil people.
Yeah, I want my world to be internally consistent. Like, for instance, a hollow world is actually not scientifically possible as far as we know. It just doesn't work physics-wise. However, there is magic in my world, so there is a magical kind of scientific explanation for it. The magic does something the scientific that causes it to be a real thing.
Yeah, well, so I mean, I like that you're putting science into your fantasy work. It grounds it a little bit, makes it a bit more relatable, and I think like it makes things interesting. Like this is a thing that happens in our world. Well, what if we put it into a magical world? Like, what would that look like? It's almost kind of like science fiction fantasy. Like there's a little bit of that in there.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely really enjoy writing science fiction too. So of course I had to bring some science fiction elements into my book.
Did you have any questions before we go? Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Fernie wanted to ask the trilogy that you wrote before, the Bone Shard trilogy. Can you tell us what is a bone shard and is this like a magical thing?
It is a magical thing.
Oh, okay. Can you give us a little taste of that?
Yeah, so the Drowning Empire trilogy is set on an archipelago of migratory islands, and it's an empire ruled by an emperor who keeps control over his people through these constructs that are powered by shards of bone he takes from his citizens.
Ouch.
So, yeah. So
what a jerk.
Not only are they powered by the bone shards, but he writes commands on these shards to tell his constructs what they can and cannot do.
Whoa. Man, that's a bad emperor.
Yeah, so it is an empire on the brink of revolution.
Yeah. People are sick of their bones getting taken from them.
They absolutely are.
Yeah, I can't blame them. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Van Show!